When I was a kid of 19, a couple of buddies of mine and me, we joined the carnival. We traveled up and down the East Coast. We worked on the rides and the fairways and doing whatever needed to be done. We did it for about 6 months. It ended up just being me and one of my friends who now lives in Hawaii. Anyway, so we traveled with the James E. Straits shows. I worked on the Roundup. And one of the things about the Roundup, we travel from town to town, state fair to state fair, and from Florida up to the border of New York, Buffalo. And when we set up, for some reason, the Roundup was quite often near the freak show. I don't know what they called it then, but I mean, they had a lot of different acts in there. They had the albino woman, sword swallower, Priscilla, the monkey woman, the alligator skin man. I actually saw a display in a cigar shop the other day, a picture of a dude with a nail going into his nose. Well, that's a carnival trick called the hammerhead. And Priscilla, the gorilla woman, was married. This is a true story. Was married to the alligator skin man. And I used to see Priscilla walking around the midway before the show opened. Sometimes it opened in the morning, but sometimes it didn't open till noon. And there was Priscilla walking. She was kind of very dainty. She had a French poodle, and anyway, she walked around the fairway. Her son taught my buddy and me the hammerhead trick, and it's a trick, right? I mean, once you see how it's done, it's easy to do. You take a nail and a hammer, and you hammer a nail directly into your nose. Boom. So one of the guys I also got to meet there was Prince Albert. Prince Albert was the world's smallest, perfectly formed, colored midget. So I got to know Prince Albert mostly because he used to come over and talk to my ticket taker, whose name was Dottie. So I worked on the ride for about a week or two before the guy I was working for as the foreman quit, and they made me the foreman of the big old Roundup. That's the ride where you stand up, and it spins and spins, and it tilts up on an axis, so you're going around and round, kind of upside down, if you can picture that. Anyway, so Prince Albert used to come over and talk to Dottie, and every once in a while, a crowd would gather around Prince Albert and talk to him about where his lifelong life in a freak show and where he went, and all these places he went, the people he met, Cuba and Mexico and all over America and Europe. He was probably, when I knew him, he had to be over 60. But every once in a while, if somebody was, if Prince Albert was feeling his oats, he would challenge somebody to a wager. And he would say, "I bet you $5. I can tell you the time, the date, and the place where you got your shoes." And of course, people would look at each other and go, "Well, that's impossible." People must have known on some level that they were being had, but essentially, you're paying, in that situation, you're paying $5 to learn what the trick is so you can go tell your friends the trick. So somebody always pulled out $5 and said, "Okay, Prince Albert, I bet you can't tell me where I got my shoes, the time, date, and the place." And Prince Albert said, "Well, if he were here today, he would say, well, today is Wednesday, February the 21st today? I don't even know. Wednesday, February the 21st at 8 a.m. And you got your shoes right on the end of your feet." And at that point, the guy has to hand his $5 over to Prince Albert, and Prince Albert took it all in good fun. I was thinking about that story when I walked out of... Oh, and by the way, the moral of the story, of the Prince Albert story, and he would tell you this after he took your $5, is never play another man's game. I was thinking about that when I walked out of the Black Panther movie last night after it was over. I mean, I didn't get up and walk out. I kind of liked it, as a matter of fact. That's why I'm making this podcast. It was like, there's something going on in this movie different than what I thought was going on. Because when I walked out of that movie, my initial reaction was I remembered Prince Albert. I remembered that trick. And it seemed like in the run-up to the movie and the marketing of the movie, it seemed like they were playing Colin and lots of other people just like a cheap drum. Hey, welcome to the Colin Flaherty Podcast, Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. And we're not going to go too far afield today, but I thought this was interesting only because it kind of reflects about how easy it is to get so much wrong when people talk about race, especially the TV people and lots of other people. I mean, so if you haven't seen the Black Panther movie yet, and you're just experiencing it through maybe your internet page, or maybe some of the comments on your Twitter feed, or you're watching MSNBC, or you're reading some of the movie review sites, I mean, all the signs were there that this was going to be some kind of race-conscious, white people suck, black people are good kind of movie. The kind we see on TV all the time. You know, like Django Unchained, 12 Days a Slave, all that kind of stuff. It wasn't that at all. Let's take a look at all the. First of all, what are some of the signs that we got that this movie was going to be some kind of disaster? Well, who was the director? The director was, I think his name was Ryan Coogler. I'm not 100% sure of that. I don't have the notes in front of me. But he's the guy who directed Fruitvale Station. And Fruitvale Station is that movie in Oakland, set in Oakland, where the cops in Oakland are always going around killing black people on the BART system for no reason whatsoever. I mean, we know that in BART, black people are not victims of the cops. We know it's the other way around. We know that black people are rampaging through BART, making everybody on that train a victim. We've done many, many, many stories on that. And the clincher on that was a few months ago when we found the Holy Grail, when we found the Vice President of Communications of BART. She sent one of her board members, Bay Area Rapid Transit System board members, that's a huge system, by the way, she sent one of her board members an email because the board member said, hey, why aren't you releasing the videos? What's up with that? The board member said, and the Vice President said, well, we're not going to release the videos because it wouldn't be fair to people of color, translation, black people, because people would get too upset and it wouldn't be fair to them. So that's the world of Fruitvale Station, where you make up movies about black victimization, but when we see black people being predators on the BART, we literally hide that video and we don't care who knows it. So that was the first clue. So what was the second clue? I mean, how many places did we see on the internet where people were saying, and on publication where people were saying, hey, this movie is all about what Africa would look like, what black people would look like had white people never gone down there and colonialized it. Or B, this movie is about what Africa looks like today. There's all this great things happening down there. And there's always been these great things going on there, except, well, people like Colin never acknowledge them. There were lots of other clues, too. Let's listen to this trailer, because there's a couple clues in this trailer.
I have seen gods fly. I've seen men build weapons that I couldn't even imagine. I've seen aliens drop from the sky.
Yeah.
But I have never seen anything like this. How much more are you hiding?
Hold up. Let's go.
We are home. My son, it is your time.
Show me my respect and bow down.
You get to decide what kind of king you are going to be. Don't freeze.
I never freeze.
The revolution will not be televised.
Show me my respect and bow down. We own ya, we own ya. We only getting started now, cause we own ya. Everybody think they know me now, cause we own ya. You and I'm a homie now, cause we own ya.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out.
Wakanda forever!
The revolution will not be televised.
Let's have some fun.
The revolution will be live.
Tell me something. What do you know about Wakanda?
It's a third world country. Textiles, shepherds, cool outfits.
All a front. Explorers have searched for it. Called it El Dorado. They looked for it in South America. But it was in Africa the whole time. I'm the only one who's seen it. And made it out alive. I can see you.
The world is changing. Soon there will only be the conquered and the conquerors.
Step into the spotlight.
You are a good man.
Step into the spotlight.
With a good heart. And it's hard for a good man to be a king.
I mean, the trailer kind of sounds like your typical American hip-hop song, right? First of all, you probably, some of you older folks out there probably may have recognized that song, Gil Scott-Heron song, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Well, this was the anthem from the mid-'60s for black people and for their revolutionary white hippie brothers who believed in violent revolution. And this was kind of encouraging them to do that by giving them a vision of what was going to the world was going to look like after the revolution was over and they killed all the pigs. And so that was another clue, like, okay, I understand what this movie's going to be about. It's just going to be about another long line of movies where black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism. As you might be able to tell, I'm on my back porch smoking a cigar today. It was snowing 2 days ago. Today it's 70 degrees. And then if you listen closely to that trailer we just heard at the end, I don't expect you to know this. I didn't know it until I read where somebody said it, and I looked it up, and it was true. The very last song we heard on that trailer was an excerpt from a song by a group called Run the Jewels. Anybody recognize Run the Jewels? Why don't I give you remember their most famous member, Killer Mike? Remember their most famous song? When are you niggas going to unite and kill the police, motherfucker? Remember that song?
When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police, motherfuckers. When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police, motherfuckers. When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police, motherfuckers. When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police, motherfuckers.
And the next clue, of course, was the very title of the movie, Black Panther. I mean, we know what the Black Panthers were in the 60s. We know what they are today. Let's just say no one's ever going to confuse them with the Rotary Club.
I said, we we gonna have to kill some crackers.
That's right, love it.
We gonna have to kill some cracker babies. Huh? To hell with what National Geographic putting out. I'm telling you to your face here tonight, we gonna have to kill some little Penelopes and some little Robbies. You wanna be free, don't you?
Yes,
Y'all bullshit me. Not sounding like that.
Why we gotta kill them?
Kill them all.
You don't wanna be free sounding like that. Do you wanna be free?
Yeah.
Do you wanna be free?
Yes, sir.
Do you wanna be free?
Yeah.
That's why I got to fight this crap. Regardless to how you feel about me. Regardless to how anybody in this damn world feels about me. I'm gonna fight this goddamn white man. Whether you like it or not.
Right.
I believe in the death and destruction of white people. Each and every one of them. Don't give a damn if the little bastard just came out of his mama's womb 3 seconds ago.
They did that to us.
Kill them all.
They did that to us.
Every last one of them. Don't spare one.
But the one thing that really set this movie up for me as being one kind of movie that it didn't really turn out to be was all the pre-movie press, the pre-opening press. You know, the movie press is not like covering a movie star is actually the opposite of covering a city councilman or a mayor or a president. It's the opposite. If you want to do a story about a movie, you have to say, like, say you want to get an interview with the director. They'll say, well, who are you sending? They'll say, John Smith. They go, no, John Smith did a bad review of my movies 2 movies ago. We don't want him. They go, okay, who do you want? That's how you negotiate movies. That's how Vanity Fair does it. Time Magazine does it. Many, many, many people do it. If you want access to the principles involved, you better be on board with what they're up to. That's why the movie people get to control, what, to a large degree, the amount of the amount plus the type of press they get. And the press coverage they got with this movie was going to place itself smack dab in the middle of this nasty racial business we have going on in this country, this nasty story, the greatest lie of our generation, the hoax of black victimization, and how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. I mean, that's what the coverage kind of said explicitly or hinted at. The longest interview I saw on this, I didn't really watch that many. I saw Joy Reid talking to the author. Joy Reid's the black woman who has a show on MSNBC on the weekends, like a Sunday morning. I don't know. It's called AM Joy. I don't know if she's on weekends or... Yeah, I think she's just on weekends. Anyway, she had a guy on her show who's a writer for Time Magazine, to which good old Colin has contributed, and a black guy. And he wrote a big story about the Black Panther movie. And let's hear their take on the whole thing.
The Black Panther has been the protector of Wakanda for generations. Now it is time to show the outside world who we are.
The revolution will not be televised.
Everybody think they know me now. Don't be scary, cause we own now. We own now. We own now.
Now that I have your attention.
We only getting started. Cause we own now.
This Friday, Marvel's long-anticipated movie Black Panther will hit movie theaters across the country. Fandango is reporting that Black Panther is outpacing advance sales for every other first-quarter release in that company's history and could break the President's Day opening weekend record. The movie features a star-studded, mostly black cast, including Chadwick Boseman in the title role, Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, and more. Boseman is also gracing the cover of this week's Time magazine. The headline, A Hero Rises. And joining me now is the author of that cover story, AM Joy friend, and contributing writer for Time Magazine, Jamil Smith. Jamil, first of all, congratulations on this cover. I'm so proud of you. You have to sign this for me next time I see you. That's so cool. You write in this piece, it's a well-written, beautiful piece, by the way, and you open it by talking about the first movie you saw with a black hero in it being Star Wars and Lando Calrissian, Billy D. Williams. Talk a little bit about the importance of black heroes, to you and to other young men and women of color.
So I was 5 years old, Joy, when I first saw Empire Strikes Back. That's 1980. And the fact that it had a black hero, though a complicated black hero in it, was important to me. I noticed it. And so when you see a man who's complicated but ultimately chooses to do the right thing, and he looks, vaguely like you, I think it is important for young people to see that. And so hopefully Black Panther will do the same thing for a lot of kids that are going out to see it this weekend. Yeah,
and a lot are going out to see this. So let's play a little bit of the trailer. Michael B. Jordan doing his thing. Take a look.
I waited my entire life for this. The world's gonna start over. I'ma burn it all.
What happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world.
Now, Jamil, with the caveat that I'll be changing my driver's license for my residence to be Wakanda, why do you suppose that people, myself included, are so crazy about this movie? What is it about this movie that is so magical for people?
Well, first thing, it's unprecedented. I mean, there's never been a film with this kind of budget that has an African-American director and a mostly black cast. Secondly, I mean, it's the first mainstream black superhero that has ever had his own film. So I think there's plenty of reason just on that level to be excited. But also, you see in this film the potential for so many, reflections of black reality, African reality and African American reality, which is a distinction in this film. So I think that people are rightfully excited. Now, look, I understand there's people who are going to say it's just a movie, but media representation is important. And though it's not, the journey to full equality, it is a step towards it.
And do you think it's significant that, and first of all, it's a well-reviewed film. It's almost universally been given hugely positive reviews, but that it's a black film, quote unquote, but that's going to travel all across sort of the human racial spectrum?
Yes, when I sat down with director Ryan Coogler and Chadwick Boseman, one of the things that they stressed to me was the fact that this movie has universal themes, tradition versus innovation, for one. But also the fact is, Wakanda, this fictional African kingdom, has essentially unlimited wealth and this resource, vibranium, that allows it to be technologically advanced. So what do you do when you have the power, the technology, and the wealth to level the playing field for black people in America and throughout the world? It's a question that the movie wrestles with in a really interesting way.
Yeah, and this proves that Marvel has sort of figured something out, right? Do you think that this, because the movie seems that it's going to make just a ton of money, does this bode well for other films like it, meaning black directors and black cast getting the opportunity to be in these big budget films?
Well, the people I've been speaking with in Hollywood, black folks mainly, really think that it could actually change things. And now, I am going to defer judgment. We've seen a lot of, really successful black, films, black directors, black stars. The Best Man in 1999. We've seen, Moonlight, obviously, Barry Jenkins. I want to see more of these before we make a judgment as to whether or not things are actually going to change. We think that there's been a lot of flashpoints of success, but Hollywood really needs to get its act together.
And is this movie particularly resonant? Obviously, it was conceived and shot and written before anybody knew who would be the next president. Do you think it's particularly poignant for it to be happening with Trump in the White House?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think, you have a white nativist movement that's being led by the president of the United States. I think, you position a character like T'Challa, an African king who can not only, destroy you, but also buy your land. I think that it's important that, people understand that a lot of people are going to see that as a threat. Now, is that the majority? Like the Trump voters, no, it's not a majority. I think there are a lot of people who are going to understand that there are universal themes in this film and also just have a great time. It's a lot of fun. And so I just think that, it definitely resonates in a certain way because of Trump, but we'll see.
Yeah. Good luck with a boycott hashtag on this movie, haters. It's not going to work. Jamil Smith, congratulations again. Great cover story in Time Magazine. And I personally cannot wait for this movie. I'm very jealous that you've already seen it, but I'll leave it there.
I mean, so that's it. That's all you have to do. Put a bunch of black people in a movie, no matter what the movie is, and Joy Reid and all the other people who consider themselves part of the talented 10th would jump up and down and scream for joy just because there's someone who looks like them on the screen, totally ignoring what's actually in the movie. That's all you have to do now? I loved how at the end they turned the discussion to Trump, right? And how we just turned the discussion to the haters because all people who like Trump hate black people. Didn't you know that? And this is from Time Magazine and MSNBC. They have a correspondent from Time Magazine and the guy from MSNBC talking about white nativism and a movie where this is not only not in there, it's probably pretty transparently, that whole point of view about evil white people is kind of condemned. And what is really disposed is this hoax of black victimization as well. God, there was so much in there talking about Trump. Good Lord. One of the things, the things that stand out in the movie, there's a couple of lines in there. They go, well, why can't you see Wakanda is this, the mythical country where nobody knows where it is and somehow it's magically shrouded so you can't see it through drones or satellites or anything like that. There, some of the new king, he's the guy that's saying, well, maybe we should, maybe it's not. The new king's wife wants to basically turn Wakanda into a welfare state with them providing the welfare because they have an almost unlimited supply of this unbelievably important mineral called vibranium. So she wants to share it with the world and relieve poverty and oppression in the world. Nobody wants to do that because if they let the people know that Wakanda exists, the king says they're refuge. And the king and his top advisor are having this discussion where they pretty much agree that refugees bring their own problems. So that's why we don't tell people we're here. We don't want the refugees. Well, that sounds suspiciously Trumponian. It's very much in a contrast to a movie that I liked, the first one, Planet of the Apes, the new version with James Franco. I liked the first one a lot. I liked the second one less, and the third one was a complete waste of time. But in the middle of that movie, of the third one, there's some kind of battle with the apes are having some kind of battle with each other, and there's a wall. And they have a long discussion about what kind of idiot thinks walls can keep people away or can protect people on either side of the wall. And that was a direct Trumponian shot at the Trump idea of we need a wall. So this movie didn't go there. This movie went to the opposite place. But it's amazing how many in this movie itself, when you actually get to the movie itself, how many direct shots there were at African American, Black American culture. Things that are very important signposts on Black American culture. The first thing I think of when I'm just remembering the movie from last night is the king is surrounded by these female bodyguards. So one of them is going on a mission to do something or other. It's not even important. So she has to go undercover, but all the women there are bald. At least in the guards. They're shaved their heads. So she puts a wig on. They're walking into this Western setting in Korea, and they have an extended conversation about wigs and how wigs are stupid and ugly and awful, and people should get rid of them. And that's what she did the first time she got the opportunity. She got rid of her do, her weave. What was that all about? And what about the villain of this movie? The villain of this movie is a guy named Michael B. Jordan. He comes straight out of Oakland with all the mannerisms, with all the language, with all the body language, with the mindset of somebody from Oakland. And that's where he's from. And he is at no point in this movie maybe for 10 seconds at the end. At no point in this movie are you sitting there cheering for this guy or anything that, there is anything about him. He speaks Ebonics. He speaks kind of a anglicized version of Ebonics. All the other black people in the movie speak English with an English accent. They're speaking the Queen's English very carefully, very properly, very politely. And as soon as this guy, Michael B. Jordan, shows up, it's like, oh yeah, the Americans are here. The black Americans are here, and they're nothing but rude, troublesome, and dangerous. And so maybe in the movie there was one or two lines where they sprinkled in a little bit of anti-white, black on white hostility or whatever. And there was one story where, one line, but I think they had to put this in there because this was actually like a precursor to the next movie coming after this. And they brought a CIA agent who's helping them, a white guy who's also from, he's mostly best known for The Hobbit and for his role in Sherlock Holmes as Sherlock Holmes' assistant, Mr. Watson. Anyway, so he gets almost killed, and he's going to die, and they take him back to Wakanda and rescue him, and then when they bring him in, the king's sister, who's like the Q, who's the technical genius of that universe, she said something about having to fix up another white boy. Okay, so this movie has spoiler alerts. I'm going to tell you if you should go see it or not in a minute, but this podcast has spoiler alerts. Anyway, so at the end, the king and the bad guy from Oakland are fighting, and let's just say the bad guy from Oakland is about to die. And the king says, well, we think we can fix you. And the guy from Oakland knows even if his wound is repaired, he did a lot of bad things that he's going to have to face the consequences for, i.e. go to jail. And of course, he does come in and he does give the line. At some point in the movie, they are talking about mass incarceration, over-policing, black people being oppressed for those reasons. So at the end of the movie, he's getting ready to die. In his death scene, he's talking about how he doesn't want to be in chains because he knew a lot of his ancestors would jump off the slave ships into the ocean because they knew it was better to die than to live in chains. Well, I hate to be one of those people that, little takes a fantasy and picks little historical inaccuracies about it, but the Wakandians were never slaves. And this Michael B. Jordan, that's part of the story, is that his character in Oakland was abandoned in Oakland by somebody from Wakanda who was there as a spy, was spying on America to see what we were up to. So his ancestors were never slaves. His ancestors were from Wakanda, and they've been around for thousands and thousands of years doing their thing with spaceships in secret. Another feature of Black American life that was roundly condemned over and over and over and over is fathers and families abandoning their children. That's the reason this Michael B. Jordan was such an angry young man. For one reason or another, his father, who was the spy from Wakanda, he got killed. And instead of the people from Wakanda grabbing him and taking him home, they left him there. They abandoned him. I mean, that was like, they must have talked about that 10 times. I mean, how many times do we have to be reminded by Jesse Lee Peterson and everybody else with a half an ounce of common sense about the nuclear holocaust that has occurred among black people without families, without fathers? And how many people have pretty much, for the last 20, 30 years, looked at it and said, well, that's okay, we don't need dad. We don't really need dads anyway. No, that movie comes down square on one side of that and condemns the other. Oh, I almost forgot one of the biggest clues of all. People who watch this channel and my videos over at minds.com/Colin Flaherty, or follow me on Twitter or on Facebook. If you're not doing all those things, please go do it right now. One of the things we see all the time is whenever there's a bad bit of argy-bargy involving black people, especially on white people, they close the comment section. And they don't give you a reason why. You just go down to the comments, because comments are a place where there's lots and lots of clues about what's going on. And when the comments are closed, that is a clue that something really, really bad happened. And that happened with this movie with Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is the movie review site, the biggest one in the world, the most influential one in the world. And apparently people were putting some bad comments on Rotten Tomatoes. So they just said, no, we're getting rid of all the bad reviews. That was the biggest red flag of all to me. So I didn't really see that much subversive in this movie. I mean, to me, subversive is something that appears to be one thing on the surface, but underneath it's not. I'm thinking of the Meek Mill song that the Philadelphia Eagles this year used as their theme song. They used it on the field. They used it when they came onto the field, when they left the field. They blared it in the locker room. It's a Meek Mill song. We did a video about it called, the song's called Dreams and Nightmares. And it's all about guns, drugs, money, bitches, and murder. I mean, it's all about oral sex. It's about if you're not a killer, you're a pussy. I mean, these aren't just one-off things, right? This is like, that's what the entire thing is about. And how Meek Mill and his fellas are going to kill you if you mess with them. That was the theme of the Philadelphia Eagles, and everybody that cheered for the Eagles didn't have one idea, one iota of a molecule of an idea what that song was about. Now that is subversive, to introduce that into the popular culture where a good number of the people consuming it don't really have a clue what's really going on. That was not in this movie. You know, it's easy to lose sight of. This was a comic book movie. Black Panther was a comic book hero, first developed back in the 70s, I think, by a guy named Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Those were the two superstars in the comic book world. But see, I was surprised when I heard those two were the ones. They used their material, because the great Ta-Nehisi Coates, who we talked about here many times, the guy who's, you know, he's kind of the it child now. He's the one that goes around giving speeches about his books, where he talks about how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism in Baltimore and lots of other places, and white liberal people cannot give him enough money to tell him how much they suck. Well, it was last year when Marvel hired him to write a Black Panther series, like 6 comics. I don't know if they ever even finished the 6, because I think they canceled it after 2, because absolutely nobody was interested in Ta-Nehisi Coates' version of the Black Panther and Wakanda. So that's another weird thing about this movie. I mean, if you listen to, remember what Joy Reid and her buddy from Time Magazine was saying, it was all about the black actors. But if you stick around for the credits, when you have a movie with this many special effects in it, I mean, there was at least 1,000 people in these credits. They just kept rolling on and on and on and on. Walt Disney was featured prominently. Lucas was featured prominently. Let's just say I think our African American brothers and sisters were probably underrepresented in the credit side of that movie. You know, the part where you actually had to do all the computer programming, the part where you had to make all these complicated computer scenes. So I don't know if that would take away the luster of Joy Reid and that writer from Time Magazine, who were all fired up about, you know, so many black faces in the movie. And man, when I was growing up, I didn't get a chance to see people like me on TV or on the movies. We did a story a couple days ago out of Sacramento where a white lady and her black husband opened a yoga studio in downtown Sacramento. And this white lady's big inspiration was she loved hip-hop music. And so her big inspiration was she was going to play hip-hop during yoga class. This set off the people in quote-unquote Black Lives Matter. They were set off. That you had 10 or 20 people demonstrating, the cameras were showing up, and they were doing all their stuff to explain cultural appropriation, how it's not appropriate for white people to listen to black music, all this stuff. And this all came from a woman whose mother was Greek, whose father was black. Her father abandoned her when she was a child, and her mother was white. So she's the head of Black Lives Matter. But the people, they wouldn't stop protesting outside of this yoga studio, even after the person running the studio, the white chick who put the hip hop up, even after she said, okay, hey, you guys don't like it, I won't do it anymore, even though it was totally 100% within her rights to do that. No, she was so down with the cause, she thought, okay, I've got to do whatever they say. And that's what she did. Didn't really make a difference. They kept coming. And they kept protesting. And they said, well, she did it a few weeks ago, and we're just going to stay here for a while longer till we get some more attention. But after that, after at the end of the clip, you see they interview the woman, the villain, the hip-hop woman, and she described all the things she had done to appease these people who were threatening her business, her livelihood, her life. And she looked into the camera with a totally puzzled look on her face, and she goes, I can't do, every time I try to do something, it's never enough. And I wonder if that's the same thing we're hearing from a lot of people like Joy Reid and that writer from Time magazine. So this guy grew up in 1980, and he's sitting there saying, well, the only person I saw in the movies was Billy Joe Williams in Star Wars in 1980. Okay. So you're saying black people are, they're underrepresented in the entertainment business? So your life is incomplete, your life is somehow ruined because black people are underrepresented in the entertainment business? There were no black movies. There were no movies with black people in them. There were no black writers. Well, Colin, there weren't major movies made out of comic book heroes, and that's why my life was incomplete. That's it. That's why your life is screwed up now, because we didn't make movies about black superheroes. Oh, yes, Colin, that's true. Good Lord, you need a life, dude. How many black people were in public life in 1980? How many? How many people in entertainment? How many people in athletics? How many people in politics? Like that lady in the yoga studio said, it's like, no matter what, it's always something. Now we've got this, big Black Panther movie. Okay, is that it? Is your life complete now that you've seen the Black Panther movie? And the guy goes, no, Hollywood has to get its act together. How many black movies has Hollywood produced in the last 5 years? How many dozens? How many dozens of movies exactly like Django Unchained and 12 Days a Slave? How many? How many movies of relentless black victimization and white racism? How many? Dozens. And somehow each and every one came out. It was like not quite as big a deal as this one, but each and every one came out. It was like, oh yeah, we're finally in the movies. Then when they came in the movies, everybody got all pissed off. They said, well, we're not getting enough Oscars. Then they got enough Oscars, but that wasn't enough either. Now we want all Oscars to go to all black people every year. Okay, whatever. Now we get the basketball coaches in the NBA reminding us, the white coaches reminding us that America's a racist country. White people are a bunch of racist people because we don't show enough respect and deference to gajillionaires who play basketball for a living. And every time somebody steps up and says, well, what can we do? Well, can you give us some more free stuff? Oh, sure. What would you like? How about some, how about cell phones? 125 minutes. Is that enough? Well, you can double it next year to 250 minutes. And after that, you can just give us unlimited minutes. How about free schooling? Yeah, that'd be cool. How about free food? Could we do that? Yeah. How about a free place to live? Yeah, that'd be nice too. What else? How about a free YMCA/rec center? How would that be? That'd be cool. How about free admission to movies where black people are the stars? Thousands of black people went to that movie for free because everybody knows that black people are totally underprivileged with no money whatsoever, so you have to give them more stuff, including a free movie like Black Panther. And we have to do that all because we didn't have enough black people in the entertainment business? That was holding your life back and making you a miserable wretch that you are today? On this channel, on this podcast, and in my books, we document a lot of black on white hostility, which of course is a precursor to violence. And, if somebody doesn't like you, that's pretty much it for you, right? It's hard to change their mind. They can't do anything right. If you don't like Leonardo da Vinci, you'd go in there, look at you'd look at the Sistine Chapel and you'd go, I've seen better. You look at the Mona Lisa, that was Michelangelo. If you don't like Michelangelo, you'd say, I've seen better. If you don't like Da Vinci, you look at the Mona Lisa and you said, man, that's the weirdest looking smile I've ever seen. When you should repaint that. And that's really where white people are today. It's like, we can't do anything right. And so lots and lots of white people and Asian people, young people, old people, gay people, straight people, kitties, puppies, and turtles are going, man, what did I do? How can I change in order to get the acceptance and the approval of all these black people who don't like us for a million different reasons, including that we don't put enough black people in these popular movies. But of course, to say that about the movies and the entertainment business is, of course, to ignore all the black people who were in the movies and entertainment business for the last 40 years. Doing quite well at it, too. Thank you. And so now we've got this Black Panther movie. And it's just another example, not of the movie, but the people reacting to the movie where black people are just telling us again and again and again, we're just not that into you, white people. So we're going to use this Black Panther movie, even though the context of the movie itself is, flimsy stuff to be beating white people up with. Kind of just the opposite. It really takes a lot of shots at black American culture in this movie. But they're just, justly or not, they're just going to use anything they can, no matter what. No matter what people do, they're just going to use it as a cudgel to kind of kick us over the head with it. Because that's the part of it, because they're just so into the greatest lie of our lifetime, the greatest myth of our generation, the hoax of black victimization. And every single thing people do wrong or right, it doesn't even make a difference. It's all the same. It's all white people messing with black people for no reason whatsoever. Whether it's in Fruitvale Station in Oakland, whether it's in Wakanda in Africa, or whether it's on my back porch while I'm doing this podcast. Everything seems to make those black kids angry.